Just a quick disclosure to share in conjunction with this podcast. Each of us are speaking to our personal experiences and do not consider ourselves experts and cannot offer medical, therapy, financial, or legal advice. We represent a wide range of experience on the autism spectrum and will always honor each perspective that is brought to our discussions. Our experiences, opinions, and perspectives are all unique and different and will be celebrated. Thank you so much for listening and connecting with us. Thank you. Welcome to Navigating Adult Autism. We're just a bunch of moms with a lot of perspectives, a lot of opinions, and a lot of experience. And this is part 2 of Profound Autism. And I'm still here with Cynthia, Heather, Elizabeth, Kara, and Lynn. And we have Tammy on the line in Kansas City. And we're missing Dawn. And I'm Mary. And we're just going to continue the conversation of Profound Autism, hoping you listened to part 1. This is part 2. And I'm just going to bring up really quick about autism being glamorized in social media, in media. The Good Doctor, Sheldon Cooper, recent celebrity diagnosis. I think, Heather, we talked about it even on social media, like on TikTok, weren't they? Refresh my memory, like some people were...
There's a whole, the whole neurodiversity movement.
Yes,
there's a lot of people that are...
a lot on that. That's getting on my nerves, can I say, by the way?
Yes, you can say, by the way.
Yeah, that's getting on my nerves. That...
Yeah, there's lots of different...
Yeah, I was listening to a radio show the other day, or several months ago, actually, and someone called in and corrected the host that I listened to, which is Jeff Lewis Live, by the way, on Sirius XM. It's wonderful. I'm trying to get him to shout out our podcast on his show. I love him. But anyway, he was talking, he joked about it and said, oh, maybe I have autism. Maybe this is Asperger's or something. And I did kind of laugh, but then I thought, well, I don't think that's too funny. And someone called in, though, really angry that he didn't use the term neurodiverse. I mean, they were livid that you can't say autism anymore. You have... Yes, I know. And I was thinking, really, try living it, sister. Like, jokes don't even... So
that's the least of our worries.
That's what you call
it. So they're trying to change the diagnosis of autism to neurodivergent.
Yes, if you have anything that's different.
I've seen neurodivergent on Facebook with a couple of professionals that have used it. Mm-hmm. So
no, it's the word. It's the word to use right now. That's for sure. And if you, but I think the why is because there are groups, and chime in anyone, but there are groups that agree and know and think that autism is not a disorder, and it is a
personality trait.
Correct. I mean, it's something like that, and they don't want it.
Who are these people? Are they individuals that are on the spectrum, high functioning individuals themselves, and they don't want the diagnosis?
Well, I think
what is it?
I think they're offended by
the autism diagnosis.
Yes, by calling it, because to them they're living their lives, and it's something that makes them unique and whatever. And I'm not disagreeing as a parent that having autism or whatever can make you unique, but we're all unique.
Yes.
And I think what I have spoken about before, and Elizabeth said in a past podcast, that the problem is that we're trying to make it this trendy, cool thing.
Right.
And there's really nothing trendy and cool about the autism at my house, at least.
Well, they're hijacking the bulk of the conversation.
They are. Yeah.
Instead of letting us have our voices as well.
Right.
On the profound end, they're hijacking everything.
Because I think that if for parents like us that are, dealing and living on the profound end, we've never discounted anyone else's experiences. I mean, I've learned from all sorts of people, but it seems like there is a thread of folks that they're specifically targeting families like ours, and I don't understand the why, except the only thing I can think of is that maybe they just have never met someone, like they don't have the mental model to understand that the reason it's a spectrum is because it's extremely wide and diverse.
And it seems like they don't even know that.
Yeah, I don't think they recognize if the individuals that might have high functioning autism, using the word autism puts them in the same category as those with our children, and that offends them.
Yes, it offends them to be a part of us, and then they don't want it. They want to just pretend like we don't exist, I guess. Yes. And that's the problem, is that then we don't get services. We don't get I've mentioned this before, the future of profound, like there's not enough resources for when our young adult children become older adults, and we're not here to, run the logistics of their lives, and their care will have to be, transferred to someone else eventually. There's just not capacity for that. And part of the reason is because, we've mentioned this, and we don't have to talk about this right now, but like the research, we're not profound individuals with autism aren't even included most of the time in any research efforts they're doing. And I think it's evident to us who we've been parenting a child with autism for over 20 years. And I've not gotten one good little nugget of information that has helped us, adapt or anything like that from research. So it is it keeps me up at night. I think it probably keeps the rest of us up at night, that if we could all get along and maybe appreciate that there are levels, literally levels, and it's a spectrum. If we could, kind of keep those words in our mind while we're thinking about, my autism is this, but I know there's other people, that struggle in different ways or have different unique whatever. So, we've talked about that before. Our community fights.
But does it bother you as parents, though, not to see it out there as profound? We all have kids with autism, but does it bother you guys with the profound end that you don't see enough of it?
What bothers me is, and this was one of our, I think, points that I don't think we've touched on, is the lack of support all the way from when we were, before pre-K, all the way through school, because the teachers don't know how to teach our children. So they just sit there in the classroom.
And babysit
Honestly, the therapists don't know. I don't know how many times I've sat at a therapy table and they're like, Lynn, we're so glad you're here. You're challenging me and making me a better therapist. I've heard those words.
I've heard that too. And I have a high functioning autism. So
and I'm like, so the therapists don't know, but with research, maybe we would have some tips and techniques, but we all have, as parents, have to figure that out. And we all know that most families don't have time or don't have the resources to do that themselves. Mm-hmm. So,
well, you're busy taking care of your profound child with autism. That's
right. But I think that would help. It's just that the lack of support, because we haven't had that.
Right.
So, can I mention something? I also sent this to, I think, Heather earlier, but there's a mom that lives in Fulton, Missouri, that is scared of all these things you're talking about. What's going to happen with her daughter once something happens to her. And she started this community. They bought a plot of land, and it's called We Built. And the idea of it is, and the premise is, that you can, as a family, you can buy into buy this little part of the community, and you invest in it. And your kiddo can live there if they need supports, or they don't. They have a big community building in the middle that they can cook and have activities and do anything they need to. But they become a community of people that are there for each other. And I don't know exactly how the investment part of it works, but that money is there for then after you're gone. Say your kiddo, once your kiddo passes, or they have to have more support or whatever, then your family then can sell that, and then that money goes back to the individual. And anyway, it's an amazing program, and her daughter's getting ready to move into this place. They're like little duplexes.
And it's in Fulton, Missouri, you said?
Yeah. There was a story where there was a kiddo in a group home, an adult, and I didn't hear about this, but it was so sad. The kiddo actually passed away, and they hid his body for 6 years, and they found him buried in a pile of cement.
That was here.
Yeah.
Where was that? It was in Missouri.
Somewhere
in Columbia, I believe.
Oh,
in Columbia. But anyway, that was her inspiration behind wanting to do this for her daughter.
Oh, wow. Wow.
What's so interesting, though, is, when you talk to parents and we like these things and we get excited about those ideas. But when it comes to the funding, it's very interesting that, home and community-based services, something like that's not going to be funded by a provider. They're not going to
Exactly.
let us use waiver funding for that type of thing. And there's some kind of a disconnect. Lynn's like, yeah, there's a disconnect because it's supposedly, somebody, sitting behind desks and decide that for someone with a disability to have the best quality of life, they have to be included in the community, even if that is by force. And they've taken away choices of this nature to be funded. Now, we could do it on our own, and that's why families are putting their money into it. But
even that has challenges because after you
Because the
die,
money
if you're
runs
on a
out.
board, then you got to have new people, and it's a whole sustainability is a big iffy.
Well, and then those parents, they're hitting retirement. They're on, how do they keep funding this? Because they're not able to. So there's some kind of a disconnect, and that goes back to what about our families on the profound end that need a certain level of support, but maybe we don't want to do the traditional provider-based home.
I mean, I will say, when Zachary was, as soon as he got his waiver, we were on a waiting list, his community-based waiver. We were on a waiting list for 2 years, and we're just piecing it together because I was still working. And I got a call from another parent that I didn't know very well, but, not like a close friend or anything, but called and were like, hey, I heard you got the waiver. And I remember this because for some reason I was getting the mail and I'll never forget it. And the thought was, hey, now you can put Zachary in, supported living situation. And I was kind of dumbfounded and I was like, yeah, we're not doing that. He's, I guess he was 19 or 20, I guess, by the time he got the waiver. And I said, that's not in our plan. And knowing even with Zachary, when he trial-based was in a day program there for a little bit while I was still working, he hid under a cover in the TV room. I mean, he's not a party animal. He's just not. And so, once we did get a waiver and DSPs came, they give him, they come to the house and they'll go out and do things, but that's where he's best, So my thought process, and I will say, even though the resources aren't there, we've had people telling us about or asking us when we're going to put him in a home since junior high. Mm-hmm. I've had coordinators and stuff asking, like, what's the plan? It's like, what do you mean? What is the plan? Like, I'm going to care for my kid as long as I can. And then we still get shame and guilt from that because they say, well, if you wait till you're 80 and you put Zachary in and then he has to go into a home, then he will have lived with you his whole life. And then how will he be able to survive? And I thought, well, how does anyone do this?
He won't be able to transition.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like, well, just because, first of all, I'm not 80, not even close. And as Lynn said before, I plan to live forever, so it's not a problem. But no, I mean, I know that eventually, and that's why we have him spend the night, he'll go with his grandparents some. Like, that's why we started some of that stuff, so that he would have an overnight without us. But I don't understand the concept, too, that it's the personal choice, like Elizabeth was talking about. Like, we can't ask our kids, like, what would you prefer? But there are things I know Zachary would prefer from his behavior.
Right.
It's behavior is communication. Yeah.
That's right, Heather.
It's our favorite. And so I know very good and well that most of the time he is happier at home with me and his dad. And no, I'm not going to rip him away from that situation that, just because, I feel like in 40 years, he might have a tough time. But I've felt that pressure. And it's like, would you do that to your kid? Like, I know children that are certainly not on the autism spectrum. They're in their 30s still living with their parents. I mean.
So my husband and I, for both of our children, have been a goal from the minute they were born that they live outside of our home.
Yeah.
Right.
However.
Yeah, that's the goal ultimately.
It's always the goal.
Yes.
But one of the things that I am concerned about, and Heather, you'd given the percentage of those that are profound autism is 25%.
Yeah.
One of my concerns is my son, like I said, is very slow motion. He likes very quiet. He has no behavior problems, knock on wood. And many that are profound or severe autism do have behaviors, violent behaviors.
Yes.
You know, just in Jack's summer camp, he had his glasses ripped off, and he still has a scar, you know, on his face. So if he were put in a living situation with others that are in the profound and severe, you know, I would say, I'm going to guess 5 or 10% of the 25% do not, you know, have
aggressive
behaviors or screamers or things like that. And they won't be able to put just that little 5% together that want to be quiet and hang out, you know, under a blanket like my son would too.
Yeah.
So that concerns me, is that when that time comes and you move to that environment, what's that going to look like?
They're going to be lumped together. And that's a very big concern. Yes, because that's what they do.
Right.
Yeah, because they're nonverbal, they'll all be lumped together, whether they have behaviors or not. And there are a lot of severe behaviors.
An ISL, there are single living.
True.
Yeah, they do
ISLs.
have, sometimes, but I will say that it's financially, it's not what they do most of the time. It's usually on a case-by-case basis, just because you can't, it's very difficult without further financial support from the family. So let's say the family is gone and there's no financial support. Someone in their SSI is not going to be able to stay in, you know, a 3-bedroom ranch home that's in a nice neighborhood by themselves, because they don't have the funding to support that typically.
And I'm not really educated on that single living ISL. Are they very popular? Are there a lot? Like, I don't know. Is there?
Oh, there's a lot of ISLs and
I know there's a lot of ISL
in our town, of course, but not typically
single.
not single.
Three individuals, right?
Generally,
Usually.
yeah.
A lot of that
about
is
90 in Kansas City that I know of, that I've been told
Okay.
by my support coordinator. So, but those are all different, you know, like living situations. Like, and then there's some parent, like what Heather said, I've been approached by a parent that Haley went to high school with, and she didn't really know what to do with her daughter, you know, what she wanted to do after high school. And she asked if we would go in with them and buy like a duplex or something, and they could be roommates. But they have to be very compatible if you do that, because this gal, like Haley, screams a lot, and this girl is one of those that, you know, she covers her ears all the time, so that wouldn't work. And she's pretty combative and has, you know, and so they just weren't.
That wouldn't work.
While they grew up together, they weren't real compatible in that way.
Yeah, those are all things you have to think about, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. And listen, go ahead.
I'm hoping that a new model comes out. I mean, my husband and I have just racked our brain about what is something that we could do as a family that would make enough money that we could set aside, like in a trust for Haley, that wouldn't affect like her Social Security or whatever, so that when we're gone, there is that pot of money there for her, that, you know, we have 2 other sons, so they could, you know, we'll be co-executors for her. But what could we do? And then I also thought about, there's that program that they have for the veterans where, you know, they're building those tiny homes and they're like 10,000 a piece. I thought, gosh, could we buy a plot of land and put a bunch of those on there, and then, you know, have individuals be able to stay in those, and we would be able to kind of be in control of who's there and who's not. But then that's even more work, because you're taking on responsibility for other kiddos, you know? So, I mean, I just have all these things going through my head, and I don't know. I told this gal from the We Build, I said, when you get that model figured out in Fulton, just, you know, you can continue it in Kansas City. And she's like, nope. She's like, I'm one and done. I'm just, you know, because they're working with like Medicaid funding and grants and all that kind of stuff, so that those kids can stay there, you know, with financial help besides their SSI.
Yeah, I would agree that we all rack our brains at night and are always thinking about our kids and options and all that. So I hear you.
The biggest change maker would be to talk to your legislators to make a legislative move, because the funding's there in the form of waivers, but we can't utilize it for projects like that. So instead of doing the 2 separate, maybe pulling them together.
And that's why usually I'm saying people need to know, because they don't vote for things they do not know about or understand.
Right.
So people might that aren't affected by autism,
which goes back to getting it out there to
help us.
Yes. Not advertise, or to make aware of profound autism and we can't hide.
We can't hide.
Right.
I mean, and I know it takes time, like, to do a page, and I think too sometimes I think, you know, It takes a lot of time to do
You
it.
do a great job.
But I mean, like, I have to do it.
Right.
To me, I really have no choice. I'm at home anyway. What can I do to advocate? I can't go out. I can't storm the Capitol like I used to when Zachary was young and go
Right.
and, you know.
We're talking about Zachary's page, Everyday Adventures with Zachary on Facebook. Just
I mean,
FYI.
unless I take him, he can't go, you know. So that's something that I can do to get the word out, which I think is why there's so many pages that have cropped up, because social media, the one nice thing I can say about it is that it does connect people that when you
does.
don't have any other way to
Right.
connect, which is nice.
Right.
Oh yeah, like Heather, I've read your page for a long time, and I knew that you and Cynthia were connected, but like you and I had never officially met. But I love reading your page and learning, and you are so well versed, and you write so well in a way that doesn't really
True.
put a negative aspect on a spin on your life, even though I know that
Very
like
loving.
Yeah.
you're going through, you're in the trenches, you know, but you put it in a way that's not always like that, you know, in a way that still makes Zachary like a person and, you know, a human and you know.
And you
how
talked about that earlier, Tammy, is I think we all do that. No matter where our kids are on the spectrum, we all have figured out that we have very little time to sit in our tears about whatever it is that's negative that's going on. We don't have time because we're running the show. You can't drive the bus and be, you know, in a in a lump.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I do get in a lump, and I hate the world occasionally. I go on cycles.
Yep.
But I know I'm there, and I know that I've got a day to do this, and then I got to get back to business because this isn't helping anyone.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
I would think you
I
all
used to
had.
have
Go ahead.
I used to have a quote that by Theodore Roosevelt that hung because we had a split level home, and you'd go downstairs to our bedroom, and it right every day when I would go downstairs, it says, it was something like, when you're up to, what was it say? Something about put your big girl panties on and hang on to the rope or something. And that's what
Hanging on to the rope.
downstairs too. And, and I would always think about that. Like, you know, just, and one thing I hate is, and this happens all the time, and I think it's just because people don't know what to say when we're out in the community, or Haley screams, or, you know, she's throwing a fit with her kicking and screaming on the floor, and she's an adult and we're in Sam's Club, you know,
Right.
people don't really know what to do, but they'll say, oh, we just don't know how you do it. And I hate that. Because
Yeah.
I'm just like, or, you know, I just don't think I could do it. Well, you know what? You don't really get a choice, and you just do what you have to do and move on, you know? I mean, so, and I think that some parents mentally are done by the time their kids are an adult. They just can't do it anymore. And that's why they are choosing to put their kids in ISL or group home. And I think that these support coordinators are hearing that, you know, they have so many people on their caseload that I think it's just natural for them to say, oh, you know, well, are you going to be like the crowd and put your kiddo in a, you know, somewhere, or so you can live your life, you know? And that's like, kind of like Heather said, you know, we want to keep Haley with us as long as possible. And even then I still have this guilt. Like, I just don't feel like anyone can take care of her like I can. And I feel like I'd be micromanaging them if she was in like a group home or something. And well, I can do it, I'm going to do it. But not judging other parents for not being able to do it.
Right.
And I think that, Sammy, I'm glad you finished with that, because that's important, because a lot of families do make that decision. And sometimes it's because they just can't do it anymore. Their road's been a lot rougher, or it's the best choice for their family. It's time, you know. We want our kids to grow up and move on with their lives. And for some, their choice is, I would rather live with roommates than be 45 and still living with my parents.
Oh no, if Zachary would say that, we'd do whatever we can.
So, you know, so we don't want any of our listeners to feel if you're making that choice. Because I know when I started working at the ARC, I just thought, never, never, never. And then I went on my first tour of one of our ISLs, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're having barbecues, they're having friends, they got movie night, and they're doing all these wonderful things. And I thought, when it's time, if that's part of what is our course, then I wasn't afraid anymore.
Oh, that's good.
Because
you were informed.
Yeah, I was informed, because it's okay to make these choices as long as you don't have to make them out of fear.
True. Well said. Well, and we know a couple parents. I mean, I know we have a mutual friend we know, and someone else that have made that choice to put him in I guess, a group home because they were the aggressive percentage. And it was really affecting their family in a very negative way. It was so disruptive. They were done. I hate to say that, but it was just.
Well, I think you can still have a healthy, loving connection. I mean, we know, like a guest we had on recently that has a family member, and they're very engaged. So you can have that. It's just that if Zachary lived with 2 other people that were having barbecues all the time, I mean, I'm just being clear. He's not ready for that at 23.
Right.
He needs quiet time after we do just about anything. So that would be.
And they might not be ready for Christmas in July either.
And he has to have the Christmas tree,
And they might not like that.
And the other thing too is the nonverbal part of it, the lack of communication. I mean,
scary.
What a fear. I mean, and I will never get over it, but the trust that you have to have that somebody is not going to take advantage of your child, abuse them. I mean, abuse is high
Ignore
in this
them
community.
if they're ill. I mean,
yes,
the list goes on.
Yes. Be attentive enough to know that their tooth hurts or they're, having an appendicitis, which just happened to an individual recently. So, I mean, those are the scary things. If Zachary was evidently, like making it evident that he did not want to be, if he was not saying "stay home, mama," he'd be glad to do whatever he wants to do. But the thought that like you can get your life back thing, it's like, well, Zachary is my life, so that wouldn't be helpful to me. So don't say that to me. Like it just depends on where it's just like the spectrum. There's all sorts of decisions that have to be made, and every family's different. What works for them is different. And so just giving people grace about whatever it is they decide is probably.
But I also
best.
appreciate what we've highlighted too, in that I think it's collectively at this table and on the phone that the state has made it so that there are limited choices for us.
Yes.
And that's unfortunate. And if we can come together or do what we can to make our voices collectively heard for our future, because we're not there yet, right?
Right.
I mean, we're talking about when we were on, so we got at least another 10, 15 years, right?
Let's hope we have more than that.
The possibility is that we can move the pendulum back. And so I'm on board for that.
Yeah.
There's partners in policy making. Look at getting involved and getting your training. They'll train if you look that up on Google that, partners in policy making here in the state of Missouri, they're gonna train you. They're gonna help you. They're gonna teach you to be able to do those things, because I know when we first started with self-directed staffing, I think we were paying $12 or $13 max. Yeah. And through a lot of effort and legislative visits, not that I did personally, but others, that now, that has it's 2.5 times more than that.
Yeah.
Big increase. The increase, up to over $30 an hour is possible. So,
wow.
And that was a lot of work. And that was a lot of work done. The ARC did a lot of work, a lot of visits, but also Empower Abilities, I think, went up there. Just lots and lots of providers wanted to be able to pay Easter Seals. Yes. Yeah, because they always have their matching T-shirts. Yes.
So. Gotcha. So back on the change the subject really quick, like your family members, I know your daughters help out. Are other family members in your supportive, or do they ask you those gnawing questions? Are you tired of the questions or the comments? How are they helping you or hindering you in any way? Or are they? I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So when Haley was little, like I said, we lived in a town of 500 people. My husband has 8 siblings, and all of them but like one lived in this tiny town. And never once did any of them take her overnight, offer to take her overnight. It was just like I think they just didn't feel comfortable. And the only time we've ever been away from Haley is if she was at a camp. She goes to Camp Barnabas, and then she recently started Camp Wonderland. Or we had a really good family friend, and her son was the same age as Haley, and they went through school together. He was typical, but we've been able to go like on a couple cruises and stuff, because I wanted to hit on just a point. If you have children that are typical and you have a kiddo with profound autism, you have to we struggled with giving them the same amount of attention as we gave our daughter.
Right.
And she was the youngest. Our boys played sports. We're often sitting in a baseball game, and this is before self-directed. We just would drag Haley with us anywhere we went. She went, we had to.
Mm-hmm.
And, my son was a pitcher, and here he is trying to pitch at a baseball game, and she's throwing a fit in the stands, So we just found it easier to, people would give us grief. Like, how could you go on a trip or not take your daughter, bring her? And, we just were like, we took our sons on a cruise, and we didn't take Haley. And I would just tell them, they deserve to have that one-on-one time with us, and we want to make them feel special in their achievements,
Sure.
just like we do her. And so just like, it's sometimes hard, just like the naysayers and the people that judge you. And a lot of new moms, I think, struggle with this when they get that diagnosis. And I think as you get older and your kids get older, like, there's been times where one or both of them, my husband or I, have went off on somebody because we just couldn't take it anymore. But then there's been times where I've just not said anything when someone says something, because I don't have to explain myself or my child to you. And, they just need to respect that. And so it's just, parents don't know what to say, or if they do, sometimes they just hit a nerve, and it's just you have to have that teachable moment.
Tammy,
Right.
and the other moms that are here, can we use this as a teaching opportunity for the community? When they are having a meltdown or having issues in public, screaming, and you get these looks, what do you guys want from other parents? I know you get the looks.
Or other individuals.
Or other individuals. What is it that you want that would make things easier?
I've had people come up and ask, what can they do to help?
Does that piss you off?
No.
That they do that?
I put them to work.
Okay.
I think that would be a good thing to say.
When my children were younger, I did, someone had did that, and I asked them to take my daughter outside and just sit with her. And it was very helpful to know that she was with somebody who appeared to be a very caring adult. Who knows? They could
Thank
have
God.
stole her. So that was very helpful.
Oh, that's good.
I think too, through a lot of the training I did, some of the things, we talked about that, and, teaching the community how to approach. So, giving those reassuring smiles, asking if there's anything. But once things are taken care of, that person has enough support. If you're the next person in line, make sure a crowd doesn't gather. Make sure
Right.
there aren't people standing there staring, whether they're staring in a negative fashion or just wondering what to do. You clear the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to be there. If all the needs are being met, then help me move people along. Say,
Mm-hmm.
they got it. If we're taking care of it. Yep. I'm just, we're here. If there's anything,
Mm-hmm.
we're getting the support. So that's what I always say. Just look, if there's not a need that you can fill and move along, unless, one or two that are kind of, off to the side in case the need escalates. But, there doesn't need to be 15 people surrounding you.
Right. Heather, what
Yeah,
about you?
I mean, I think the glares and the stares are what I most.
Does that get you the most?
Or the people that just don't even make eye contact?
Well, but if they're avoiding your eye contact, or they're just directly staring in a mean way to you. And then there's other times where people are just bewildered, and sometimes that's kids and things like that. So I appreciate one of the best kind of back and forth that we had. Zachary does do a lot of verbal stimming, so we don't walk around. We're not quiet when we come or go. You're gonna know we're there. Generally, we're talking about VeggieTales or something. And we were waiting for an appointment, and the daughter was just mouth open, staring at him. And I knew, you can see him. I'm very well used to, detecting who's doing that. And it was interesting because the mom then started asking me questions. And it was, she when was he diagnosed, or, whatever. And we talked, and then once the daughter was off in her appointment, she just said, I just want you to know, I saw my daughter staring at your son. And I was asking those questions because she probably was not going to ask you them, because she was, 8 or 10 or something like that. And she said, I thought that would be a good learning. And I was like, that is awesome. So I would think anything but stare. Mm-hmm. So a smile or an acknowledgement, or there was one time that we did have a horrible meltdown in an airport, and there was over 100 people there. No one did anything except avoid. us. And then afterwards, like an hour later, when the plane had already taken off and whatever, there was a mom that popped her head up 2 rows ahead of us and said, he did a great job, like on the plane, because he had a meltdown before we got on. And so that was nice of her to acknowledge in the end, like that helped me at the end. But it didn't help me at all with
The problem.
yeah, and it's weird because I know people have natural tendencies, whether they're helpers or they're not. And I know I'm a natural helper. But if I'm in one of those situations where I see someone struggling, the last thing I'm going to do is try to make them feel worse than they probably already feel.
Right.
So, I would reach a hand out, or I would say, do you need anything, or whatever the case may be. I think that's always the best. But I think people just don't understand what they're seeing sometimes.
Yeah. They don't want to make it worse.
They don't want to make it worse, and they don't understand, like, even I had a family member ask, well, but what if they were aggressive or something? Like they associated like autism with aggression. And I said, well, first of all, there's a lot of people with autism that don't have aggression. And the ones that do, I said, I would assume that if Zachary had major aggression, I would know as his caregiver when we were able to go out in the community and when obviously we were not able to.
Right.
And then if we had an issue or something set him off or whatever, then we would generally know how to deal with that, or we wouldn't
You'd have a
take him
plan.
to the mall. Yeah, you have a plan. You always have
always
a
have a
logistical plan.
Yes.
I mean, we
Always
just
a
went to
plan.
Silver Dollar City and it was a 2-week plan and we lasted 2 hours and 6 minutes. But I mean, there was a hardcore plan.
Who's keeping track? But
Well,
that's good data to have.
we time ourselves, just so you know, because for community outings like that, major ones, Michael starts a timer, and that we want to know how long we last.
That's good data.
Yeah, because we want to know, did we make it longer this time, or was that
awesome.
a 10-minute trip to Silver Dollar
awesome.
City, which no one wants to have? So.
No.
Should have gone to the sensory friendly day. It was very nice.
You know what the thing about, and we're going to try that some too. That's sometimes the sensory days that they have means that there's more kids there. Okay, good. And so Zachary, he loves kids from afar, but kids, they ruin almost every trip that we try to take.
You're afraid it's going to bring on more negative.
Yeah, and I would never take them into a room with
Screaming.
100 kids, whether they, you know what I mean? Yes. Because we'd have to leave instantly. But I love the idea of it. I know it helps many people, so I appreciate the services.
There was an Easter egg hunt we attended a couple years ago, and those kind of things are for little kids, but we know that our kiddos on the spectrum are function as little kids. And so they had an adult Easter egg hunt where it was only adults and it was quiet and it was great. But as to the other question, if I could just take a second.
Sure.
One of the things, like, we've had so many meltdowns, in public, and we often have people do the staring, or like little kids, mommy, why is she doing that? What's wrong with her? That kind of thing. And the best thing that ever happened to us, I think, or the best thing I like is a parent just comes up and says, hey, do you need anything? And I'm usually like, we're like, okay, we got it. Cause we know what to do. And then they just kind of like, but I still feel comforted that they're even asking, even though they may not know what to do. But we were in church, and that was, it's a hard time. Haley sometimes doesn't make it through church, or, it's a lot of quiet in the, chapels and stuff. And here she is screaming and stomping her feet and throwing a fit sometimes. And I had a mom come up to me who had 2 small children, and she's like, my daughters, I really am trying to teach them about autism and why Haley's different than them and why she doesn't talk. And she's like, what can I do? How can we interact with Haley? And I said, well, you know what? She loves high fives. So I said, because sometimes these kids are scared of them, they're seeing them throw fits and stuff, and they're just like mortified. And I think that, like, in Kansas City, in Liberty Public Schools, they only had they have 11 elementary schools. They only had 3 of those elementary schools that had kids with special needs. The rest of them didn't. And I think that's such a disservice because, those kiddos, and these typical kids need to be around kiddos that have special needs, because that teaches them compassion and that there are differences and that they can still be friends with people that are different. And so it was neat because after that, we would go to church. And I told this mom, I said, those girls can come up and say, and it said, Haley's not going to talk back to him, but they can talk to her and say hi. And so after that, every time that we would see her at church, or we would see them, their family would come up and they'd say, Haley, will you give me a high five? And Haley would give them a high five.
Oh,
And that was just their little way to connect with her. And she loved it and they loved it, and they weren't scared of her anymore because, you know, she's big. She's always been kind of big, and here they are, these little kids, and they don't know what to do. And another situation we had was, you know, even though Haley, like, she doesn't like certain smells. So like going into a shoe store is a challenge. She just hates the smell of them. I don't know why. And, but so we want her to be able to get through that though. And so there are times where we do try to push her a little bit, like kind of like Heather was saying, can we stay in here 5 minutes? Let's, you know, can we make it 10 minutes? Because, you know, she's going to have shoes at some point. And so anyway, we've tried to push her, but one thing she loves to do is go to the grocery store. So she had this obsession with people's drinks though. And so here we are at the shopping cart, we're passing someone in the aisle, and they have like a fountain drink, or, you know, from like Hardee's. She's you know, and I mean, I'm watching her like a hawk already, because parents overcompensate for their kids, you know? And, so anyway, here she goes and grabs the drink, takes a big gulp of it. And the parents or the other people are always like appalled, like, oh my gosh, how could your kid do this? And I just politely say, you know, I'm really sorry. You know, Haley has autism, and we're trying to teach her how to act in public. And, you know, I'll just usually give them like, here's some money for your drink. I'm so sorry. Like one time it was a Starbucks drink, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so
that's probably $15 to me.
But, you know, I refuse to not take her out in public, even though she has those challenges, because I think I look at it as a teachable moment to other people.
True.
Every time I go out, and it's hard. It's harder for me. It'd be easier for me just to sit in the house with her and never do anything, you know, or like only do things at home. But I want her to have those experiences and learn. And you know what? We finally got past that. And I don't know if it's just because that behavior passed, or, you know, I avoided all the people in different aisles. I don't know.
Celebrate either way, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Nathan had that too. I still remember from the dry cleaners going across the street and getting a new Big Gulp or whatever they're called in a candy bar and bringing it back because I owed her a drink and wanted to sweeten the deal with a candy bar. Yeah. But you're right about getting out in the community and doing those things because that's important. That is, you know, our family has just always done that. I don't know, a month or so ago, we were in one of our craft stores, Hobby Lobby, and the cashier was a young girl, and she was looking down, and Nathan reached up to straighten something, and she grabbed it, and I said, no, don't touch. That's not yours. She grabbed it out of his hand before she had looked, and she looked up, and she was mortified. She said, I am so sorry. And I told her, I said, no. I said, you don't have to be sorry. This is a teaching moment. I said, if we don't get out of the house, we don't do this. He's never has things in front of him that tempt him. We're never going to learn. You gave me a teaching moment. And she just softened, and then she asked questions and left very, you know, and then she was addressing him and talking to him and, you know, but yeah, if we stay home, those moments, those teaching moments aren't going to happen.
Right.
And, you know, and that, you know, there've been so many of those, but that was just one of our most recent ones. And it was, and she was ready to let him have it, but, you know, but she could tell as soon as she looked at him, there was something else going on.
Yeah.
And she was so sweet to, you know, to back off and apologize, even though, you know,
That's
she didn't
good.
need to, but,
That's good.
you know.
And, you know, those places that you frequent with your kids, like the same price shopper we went to is the closest one to our house. And sometimes I feel like she just was like going nuts being in the house. And I'm like, I'm going to take her to the store, you know, even if we really didn't need anything. But, you know, those workers at the store, they came to know Haley and love her. And when we moved away, you know, they were like, oh, we're really going to miss Haley. And at church, too, they would know she was there because her little scream that she did. And they're like, oh, we know Haley's here, you know, and it just became it was just like a normal thing. You know, we didn't have to feel, and you want to be able to feel accepted and loved in the environment that you're in, that you're bringing your child to. And if you don't take them in those environments, you can't learn. But then there are going to be those people who are so negative, and you know, like she would scream, and you could hear people, and you know, a couple aisles over, like, oh my gosh, you know, I just have heard the meanest, cruelest things, and sometimes I have to just walk away because I'm just going to say things that aren't unkind.
Right. Right. That's very true. That's very true. Heather,
And then there's times where
Go
I
ahead.
take the time and sit and and explain, I'm so sorry, she has autism and blah, 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 blah. But then I go through these phases where I'm like, no, I'm not explaining all this.
There's some days you're just tired of it and you don't want to explain it and you just are aggravated and you want to get out of the store or whatever. Yeah. That's just normal. Yeah. So do you guys have meltdowns yourself? Like someday you've got to, because I do. We do.
Mother meltdowns? Is that
Your mother meltdowns? Or I mean, like where it's hard and stressful, you just say, geez Louise, like I can't take it anymore. Like what's your breaking point? Is it just
Well, we probably all, I have a good hit on my own capacity. And I've talked about this before, but I'm kind of not financially now, right? Because I don't work. I do not draw a paycheck. Thank you. I work directly for Zachary Woodring. But otherwise, I hold my family. So which the two of them, the two guys in my house, I hold them together. I am the glue. And if the glue is upset or wanting to jump off a cliff, they all try to jump with me. Do you know what I'm saying? So I am very strategic about when I want to jump off the cliff. But I can tell, yes, I know when yes, especially after being home now. Like I don't work full time and care for Zachary. Right now I'm doing that, which is weird. I always did it, but now I have this. Now it's like that's all I do, so I have no other outlet, right? Because I would go to lunch with coworkers, or I had meetings, and I talked to other people that could conversate with me, and I don't have that now. But I would just say that I do a multitude of things, as we kind of talked about in a self-care episode that we did.
I know that's probably redundant that I asked that, because
but yeah, I think you just have to know your capacity and then ask for. I don't know if I asked for help with Zachary. That's not generally the solution. Because again, there's limited people that have the time or the skill set to do it. And sometimes even like we have, two sets of grandparents, but as those people age too, Zachary's a full grown man-sized man. And if he decides to fight or flight, and that, you have to be able to catch him. And you have to be able to have that safety stuff and, taking them out places and stuff like that. So, but I, for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
I just try to do it quietly in my own time.
Because your world can be small when there's certain people that can help take care of your kids.
It's small, yeah.
And so when you're really frustrated or just need to walk away, how they teach kids just to walk away. If you're mad, I'm sure we all have that feeling.
Yeah.
So, but you're not really able to walk away because someone always has to have eyes on your child. So that makes it exceptionally
I think to me,
difficult.
when Zachary takes a nap is when and Michael said, you should nap when he naps. And I'm like, you don't understand. That's the only quiet time I have.
Exactly.
I can't nap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
I'll sleep tonight whenever we set the alarm and whatever, but I need to do something creative or get something done or just sit and enjoy the silence a little bit when I'm not,
Exactly.
Yeah.
What about you, Lynn? Nothing comes to mind. Tough. I guess I stumped him. Sorry.
Well,
what about you, Tammy? Anything?
Well, for us, Brian and I have been married. We just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary in July. And what we've always done that's worked well for us is, and I don't know how single parents do this, but we know each other so well that we can tell if one of us is getting like overwhelmed or Haley tends to kind of like one of the things we'll be in the car and she sits behind me behind the passenger seat. And when she went through this phase where she would pull my hair, just a little tiny bit, pulling my hair, and she knew, and Brian, my husband's like, well, she just knows how to get under your skin. Well, so we've always just, been really truly a 50-50 relationship. Whichever one of us gets home first, cooks dinner. Whichever one, if Haley gets up in the night, I'm not a morning person and he usually always gets up in the night with her. But if she needs, other things done, like shaving her legs and all that stuff, I always do that kind of thing. But if one of us is getting overwhelmed, the other one, I'll just tell him, it's like, I need a break. I've got to, or like if it's been a long day or whatever, I just say, I've got to have a break. And he's really good about, he's like, okay. And then he'll take her, But we've definitely had those fights about, it's almost like becomes like a competition of who's doing more, and she probably the first 20 years of her life, she was literally like the Energizer bunny on crack. She never, from the moment she woke up to the time she went to bed, she never stopped.
Wow.
Never. I mean, we never sat down until she was in bed. And by the time she went to bed, we were so exhausted that, I mean, she just never stopped. She paced, she was into stuff. You couldn't even clean up one mess before she was in another one. And you couldn't get that one cleaned up before she was in another one. And it was just literally like, and then we'd have PAs come over, and I never could, I wanted to just sit and, like Heather said, sit and relax or do a craft. Well, I never could stay at the house because she wanted to follow me around. She didn't want to go with the PA. You know, so I never could relax. She just was following me around, which I'm glad she loves me, but you know, I needed that time away.
Of course.
And so I got to where I would just leave the house because that's the only way I could have a break.
Well,
you know.
Right. Well, this has been really informative. Do you guys have any last thoughts on profound autism that you want to share?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Well, sure.
Okay. Each one of your children, can you, is there a strength that you admire in them?
Great question.
Who's going first?
Good one.
I'll go first, just real quick. Well, I have one cute one. When Jack was at school, I always tried to do, in October, Down syndrome awareness in autism, but we focused on Down syndrome for whatever reason. And I would always tell the students that he was a great secret keeper because he was nonverbal and you can tell him anything. And
He'll never tell.
and he never tells. But as he's gotten older, we really Jack has a great work ethic. And once you teach him a task of putting the dishes away or whatever, that is him. He owns it. You better not touch it. If you do, and he's in the other room, he will run because he heard it opening. And he will do it himself. And because of that, I think, we've always tried to build an environment. I always have this, that for happiness, we all need something to do, something to hope for, and someone to love. I've always tried to build that environment for him. And I do think I'm a strong believer, as you all know, in a purposeful life and giving him, and I'm appreciative of his work ethic because I can tell that he appreciates when he does something independent and we've set it up so that he can, and you can just see that on him.
He recognizes the praise or that you're proud.
Or not only just me, but I can see it in him.
Right.
That he is glad that he can do this by himself.
I love that.
So that's his strength.
Good. Elizabeth?
Well, Nathan, I mean, he has a number of strengths and daily strengths, but his biggest strength is his love for his family. He loves his family. He's passionate about if we can all, be together, do things together. He thinks his sisters are amazing when they're away for a while. They come in. We do not, we all go to Disney World. We do not go without everybody because he will be asking over and over and over, for that sister or that person that's not there. Yeah, he loves that togetherness, and he just loves being part of a family, and he loves everybody. He doesn't hold a grudge. He doesn't get mad. It's just not in him, and he's got this smile that once he gives you that smile and he's let you in, it just melts you. He had an aide once for camp, and she was just about ready to say, I can't do this anymore. I don't feel like I'm doing anything good. I don't feel like like I'm helping him. I don't feel like I'm contributing to that. I think he needs to have somebody else. And then I picked him up the next day after a field trip, and she walked in and she was beaming, and I was like, he got you, didn't he? She goes, yes. We were sitting on the bus and he just reached over and touched me, and I looked at him and he smiled. And they just became best buddies, and he has a way to touch people. He used to smell people a lot and just go in and breathe them in.
Yes.
But, he brought a woman to tears. We were leaving the hospital. He'd been in for a therapy, and she had a hard time. And she just he feels me. He knows that something's going on. I said, yeah. And she just, he just appreciates people, but especially family. So he's really into grandpa right now. So,
That's sweet. Tammy, what about you?
It's so ironic that I'm going to say some of the same things, but everyone that works with Haley always is like, oh, we just love Haley so much. And She loves her family too. And both of her brothers live out of state, and we just grew up so close as a family, going to autism events. And both our boys spoke at the Capitol when the autism legislation was trying to be passed about what it was like to have a sibling with autism. And when they started this thing with her, because she has a lot of sensory needs, when they see her, they do the 10-second hug because she loves the deep pressure. And so they'll hug really, really tight and count to 10. And she just laughs and giggles and thinks it's so funny. And then but she is such a hard worker too. And in high school, and even before that, she loves work boxes. And there was a time I remember where they're like, she's doing 50 work boxes a day. I mean, she's just go, 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 go. And she just loves it. And, like she picks up sticks, and she just loves these tasks. They're kind of mundane tasks, but she's very task oriented. Mm-hmm. And, but she's just happy. Mm-hmm. And she loves roller coasters. And we would take her to Worlds of Fun, and she would ride in the front car with her hands up and just giggle the whole time. And,
that's sweet.
So that's something as a family we really enjoy doing together, is going to, like, we've been to Silver Dollar City and Six Flags and all those places, and just love doing things with the family.
Yep. Oh, good. And Heather?
I would
Last
say,
but not least.
Yes, for Zachary, he's just a kind spirit. I would probably say that about all of our kids. I think even though Zachary paces all day and whatever, he still has a calm spirit. Like, they know, I just feel like they know more about what this life's supposed to be about than any of the rest of us. Yeah, but I would say his connection, even though you can't always tell because he may not be interacting with you directly, I think his love for pictures and family coming together, he may not be sitting having a conversation with you, but he keeps us really more connected than we probably would be otherwise, because
that's a good point.
He's moving through the holidays and such.
Yeah, right.
He got out.
Do you have your Christmas tree up yet?
Well, so it's October right now. This is the first time we've made it till October. We just started taking the fall decorations down today.
Okay. Moving right along.
Yeah. Christmas.
You're going to get home and the Christmas tree's up.
That might happen. You never know.
Oh, gosh. Well, this is a good part 1 and part 2 of Profound Autism. I think we've learned a lot, and we really thank all of you, and especially Tammy calling in. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You gave a lot of great information.
Pleasure.
And we hope to have you back in the future. We would love that. So
absolutely.
Thank you to Lynn, too, for coming, being our guest.
Thank you.
And our sweet moms, Elizabeth and Heather, with our Profound Autism child, I should say. So we're going to conclude, and you can listen to us on our website, Apple or Spotify. Our website is navigatingadultautism.com, or you can email us at moms@navigatingadultautism.com, and you can follow us on Facebook and on Instagram at Navigating Adult Autism Podcast. So please like, follow, and share. We'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Tammy.
Thanks.
Bye, Tammy. Thank you.
Bye-bye.